So this is going to be three case studies about three pretty different financial aid awards. Um, and I think you'll be doing a little bit of learning tonight about how to read financial aid awards, about how to understand the differences between financial aid awards and how to find the colleges that make the most sense for your family, given your particular financial aid profile. So let's dive right in. The three students whose financial aid awards I want to share with you are Carolina, Jared, and Emma. And they're different, they have different profiles. Carolina is first gen. Her parents did not go to college, nor were they born in this country. Um, she, at the time she applied to college, she was living with her mother, who was a housekeeper, very low income. Carolina went to a suburban public high school, and she had an academic interest in political science and public policy. GPA, given the number of AP classes she took, her unweighted GPA was excellent, 3.77. She took 10 APs all told, four of them in 12th grade, and the AP test scores she reported were 5, 5, 5, 4. And I don't remember if we reported the three. Usually I don't, or I advise that students not report ones, twos, and threes. But certainly the 3 5s and a 4 are fantastic scores. Her SAT, 710 reading and writing, 700 math, um, very strong, probably below the current average of the college that she wound up going to, and I'll share that with you in a few minutes. But I would say, just to round out who she is, the quality of her essays was very high, an 8 out of 10. That's my own subjective ranking. Her extracurriculars also very high, an 8 out of 10. Hers were focused on speech and debate, at in some cases at a national level, and also she was involved in um, other kinds of public policy related activities. And in each one of these things, she distinguished herself in leadership. That's Carolina. Try to keep her in mind. Jared, the second of our three. Jared's parents are college graduates, and Jared had no demonstrated financial need, where Carolina had a great deal of financial need. His high school is a fairly well-known in his area, fairly well-known progressive urban private day school. And Jared is all about creative writing. In fact, his job, his paying job outside of school, was at a bookstore. GPA 4.0 unweighted. Um, his school does not have APs, but they do have honors and other advanced classes, straight A's. But I would also say that this particular school is pretty generous with giving out A's. So no APs, but 9 honors or advanced classes. Um, his his ACT highest score was a 32, which was quite an accomplishment. When we started working together uh, toward the end of 10th grade, I believe it was, he was convinced he was not going to take any standardized tests because he was, in his words, terrible at them, but he wound up doing quite well. His essays were fantastic. Extracurriculars were I mean, he does have the job, which is always a positive. Um, but his extracurriculars, like his summer activities, were 2 summers in a row, going to a creative writing summer program. So I would give them a 7 out of 10, but not off the charts. Leadership, good, but not great. So that's Jared. Our third one is Emma. And Emma's parents, also like Jared's, college grads. They have what I would call moderate financial need. Um, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. Emma went to a suburban public high school with an interest in and submitted her college applications with an interest in psychology and criminal justice. I think several of the schools on her list, she noted criminal justice as her intended major. Others that didn't have a criminal justice major, she put down psychology. Emma's unweighted GPA approaching a 3.7. Emma, little less rigorous a curriculum than Carolina. Emma took 2 APs in 10th, 2 APs in 11th, 2 APs in 12th. Strong test scores, 3 4s and a 3. Um, Her ACT also a 32. So strong, but not amazing. Um, Her essays were very good at a 7 out of 10. Her extracurriculars really excellent, an 8 out of 10, including dance, which she had been doing for many years. She had a paid job working as a hostess in a restaurant. Her activities included youth in government, and which kind of aligns fairly nicely with her interest in criminal justice and several community service activities. Demonstrated a lot of leadership. So those are our three: Carolina, Jared, and Emma. Now, let's look closely at their financial aid offers. I'm going to just stop sharing for a moment to bring that up. Okay, and I think I can reshare now. Okay, so this is Carolina's. Carolina got into Barnard and is in her third or fourth year now. Um, and she got a phenomenal need-based award. Barnard, like many similar Ivy League schools or Ivy League adjacent schools, meets 100% of demonstrated need. If you get in, you will get an aid package that meets 100% of your demonstrated need. So let's see, I'm going to take you through this financial aid award that can be complicated to read. So at the top, we see what's called the total cost of attendance or budget. And yeah, it's a few years ago, so the prices are a little bit lower than they are now for sure. Um, but the numbers may change, but essentially the principles are identical. So at Barnard, tuition and fees at that time, 58,000 a year. Housing and meals for an on-campus student, 17,800. Books and supplies estimated at about 1150. Those are not hard costs. Those are costs that will be paid over the course of the year, not at registration each semester. Same with transportation. This is an estimation of what she would have to pay over the course of the year to travel back and forth from home several times. Other costs, other personal costs, estimated at 1370, and that's a total annual cost of attendance of 79,344. Now let's look at what she got. College costs you will be required to pay. Look at this. $0. And now we'll see why. In the in the scholarship and grant section, you got no merit-based scholarships. Why? Because Barnard and the Ivies and many of the schools similar to the Ivies give nothing or next to nothing in merit aid. They are meeting 100% of financial need. So they give a lot of money in need-based aid. So if we look at this section of Carolina's financial aid award, she got $64.95 in federal Pell Grants. That's not money from the institution. That's direct from the federal government. The Pell Grants go to low-income families. Institutional grants, $72,849. How did they come up with that? Well, they meet 100% of need, and her need was the entire cost of attendance. So you add these two together, it comes up to 79,344, which is exactly the annual cost of Barnard. They're not asking her to do a work-study job, and Barnard is one of those 20 or so schools, I believe. I ought to do some research and do a total count on that, but there are about 20 schools that have replaced federal loans in the financial aid award with additional institutional grant money. So they're making it possible for someone like Carolina to graduate from college debt-free because they're not including loans in the financial aid award. Most schools do. And you'll see that in another financial aid award. Okay, so she was thrilled, literally paying nothing for 4 years at a great institution. All right, now let's look at Jared. If you recall, Jared had no financial need. So if Jared went to a school like Barnard that meets 100% of need but doesn't give any merit aid, he wouldn't have gotten any money in financial aid. But I made sure that for his family, and he did apply to some schools that give no merit aid, but I also made sure that for the targets and likelies on his list, that there were enough schools that were generous with merit aid. So let's see how he did at Oberlin. Gift assistance, it's divided up per semester. The total in the John F. Oberlin scholarship, $24,000 per year. And some of you may know already that merit aid awards are renewable for all 4 years that the student is in college. So that's one of the great things about merit awards. As long as you maintain a fairly minimal GPA, I've never seen it higher than a 3.0. Sometimes it's even lower, like a 2.5. Each of the students' years in college, they can renew. They will renew their merit aid award for all 4 years. So between the 24,000 and the 10,000 Oberlin Commitment Scholarship, that's a total merit aid gift of 34,000 per year. And here we see the billable charges. I don't like that Oberlin does not include, like Barnard and other schools do, the non-billable charges, those soft charges like books, transportation, personal expenses, because they all add up to the total cost of attendance. But in this case, they're just itemizing the billable charges, tuition, fees, room and board. They come out to 89,528. You subtract that from you subtract the gift aid 34,000 from that amount, and it's a pretty nice discount. Still a lot of money, but this is a family, if you recall, with zero financial need. So uh, that is a no, nothing there I want to show you. So that's a second kind of award that was entirely merit aid. Third award, and this is from Tulane, and this is for I'm remembering her real name, and I'm forgetting the pseudonym that I gave her. Oh my gosh, Emma. um, so Emma. Uh, by the way, Jared is not going to Oberlin. He got into most of the schools he applied to, and where we still don't know for sure where he's going. He's a current senior in high school, but it probably won't be Oberlin, unfortunately, even though that was a very nice financial aid award. Emma did wind up going to Tulane, and she couldn't have been happier, just like Carolina was really happy with Barnard, not just the money, but the experience. So this is a financial aid award that looks, just the layout looks very similar to Barnard, and it's a template that I approve of. I wish that every college used it. There have been some developments in the past to try to, by the Office of Federal Student Aid, to try to impose uniformity from in the financial aid award, like so many other things now with respect to higher education um, uh, and financial aid. We don't know what's immediately in store, but it would certainly be a good thing for colleges to all unify around a um, a better template like this. So at the top, once again, total cost of attendance. We see tuition 65,537. And this also is a couple of years old. We see housing and meals 18,088. Books and supplies 1,200. An estimate of transportation costs 900. Other educational costs like personal expenses 1621, for a total cost that year at Tulane of 87,346. Now, the next section, very important. Anyone who's applying for need-based financial aid, not merit aid, but need-based financial aid, will have to submit the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And at about 170 additional schools, there's a second form, which is called an institutional form, and that's the CSS profile. So Tulane is the schools that tend to, the 170 that tend to use this CSS profile, they tend to be the private institutions, not the publics, although a few publics do use it in addition to the FAFSA. And they tend to be highly selective schools, although there are some schools that are less selective that are using it as well. Tulane, being a highly selective institution and a private, is not surprisingly using the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA. The FAFSA is used in this case strictly to determine federal aid. As you'll remember, Carolina received a Pell Grant. You can't get a Pell Grant without submitting the FAFSA. But at Tulane, their institutional aid is going to be determined by the CSS profile. So we see here that the FAFSA determined that the family's expected family contribution, now called a student aid index, SAI, based on the FAFSA, the family should be expected to contribute 44,800 annually toward the student's educational expenses. But based on this other form, the CSS profile, sorry, that number was actually quite a bit lower. And there could be a variety of reasons why that's true, but we're not going to go into that today. I have other presentations that I've given on the difference between the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Feel free to look that up in the Grown and Flown archives. So so what we see in the next sections down is something somewhat unusual. Emma was offered by Tulane both a merit scholarship and institutional grants, need-based grants. It's not that common. In general, merit aid is reserved as financial aid for those families who will not qualify for need-based aid. They still want to get something. They want an incentive to enroll at that school. Need-based aid obviously goes to applicants with demonstrated need. But in this case, Tulane felt that they wanted to sweeten the pot a little bit. Now, the total amount that Emma is getting in need-based aid, 38,000 over here in the grants section, and merit-based scholarships, 14, that adds up to 38, 48, 52, which is kind of it's actually, a lot. So 52, then that leaves a difference of 35,346. We see right here. College costs you will be required to pay. So they're still required to pay more than what the CSS profile estimated they would have to pay, but a lot less than what the FAFSA said that they would have to pay. So I'm not sure why Tulane in this case didn't give Emma more need-based aid and not give her merit aid, but they may have felt that maybe their logarithms have taught them that if you combine need-based aid with a merit scholarship, the student might be, and the parents might be more jazzed to enroll, even though the total amount of money is identical. She may have felt a little special. She did wind up enrolling here. It was probably the best offer financially that she received. So that's a total of 52,000 in grant money. And on top of that, to make this 35,346, which again, the difference between total grants and the difference between the total cost of Tulane and grant and scholarship money alone, their net price, 35,346. Federal student loans can bring the out-of-pocket costs down, and loans are included, as I said earlier, in financial aid awards. So It's a little counterintuitive because those loans will have to be repaid with interest down the road after the student graduates from college. But it certainly eases the pain of the 35,346 by this amount. And 5,500 is the cap, the federal cap on what a student can borrow in federal undergraduate loans for their first year of college. Okay, so those are the three different awards. Let me just stop sharing for a moment. um, and I'm going to go to the next page before I share my screen again. Okay. Going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Sorry, this is a little clunky. All right, so just to review the differences between these three awards. For Carolina High Need, I specifically looked for, because I knew she was a high achiever, I specifically looked for schools that I knew met 100% of demonstrated need. Because her family is so low income, even a school that meets 90% of need, and I'm going to introduce you to a resource where you can learn about which you can learn about each school's financial generosity. But even if a school met 95% of need, that would leave Carolina's parents with a small but impossible parent contribution, impossible for them to meet, even if it was as little as 2 or 3 or 4,000 a year out of their total cost of 80,000 a year, total price of Barnard. Her parents would be unable to meet that. They truly live paycheck to paycheck. So I wanted to find schools for her that I knew met and meet year after year full need. And the good news, there are about 60 schools that meet 100% of need year in, year out. These things don't fluctuate very much year to year. A school that meets 100% of need may the following year meet 99% of need, but it's not going to go down to 90. And there are 100 schools that are meeting 90% of need or more. So whether you're an A plus, A minus, B plus, B student, if you have substantial financial need, you will find schools that are appropriate for your family. For Jared, who has zero financial need, I looked for schools, even though his family didn't really need the money, they were able to afford the sticker price of any school he got into. So we came up with an approach where the schools he most wanted to apply to were schools that he was aiming high. These were schools that give no merit aid whatsoever. Parents were okay with that. But for the targets and likelies, the schools where he had a higher probability of admission, they were appreciative of my looking for schools that were generous with merit aid. It made no difference to Jared whether the school was generous with need-based aid because he wasn't going to get any. And you will see from when we go to the resource that I want to share with you, we will see that there are about 85 schools that offer an average merit aid award year in, year out of at least 20,000 a year. You'll recall Jared's 34,000 was quite high. That's way up there above the average merit aid award. But in terms of averages, I'm seeing, my students are getting anywhere from 10 grand a year, 12 grand a year, 18, 20, and in some cases into the 30s. But 30s are high and, and somewhat unusual. There are about 85 schools that award at least $20,000 a year, their average merit aid award, to the students receiving merit aid. And that merit aid is going to at least 50% of their non-need undergraduates. Uh, Duke has the highest average merit aid award of 70 something thousand a year, but like 4% of their undergraduates get merit aid. These are very, very specific scholarships. So first of all, you have to get into Duke. Second of all, you have to be one of the 4% who's there who even can get merit aid. Emma, if you remember, moderate financial need, got a nice combination of merit and need. I looked for schools like that on her list. I knew that they were going to get um, some need-based aid, but I wasn't sure it was going to be enough for them. This is a family that didn't have a lot of savings put away. They had some older siblings who went through college, and they just kind of depleted their savings. So I wanted to find schools that offered a combination of need and merit aid, and there are plenty of these as well. So how do we find schools that are generous with need-based aid and very generous with merit aid, or both? It's going to stop sharing for a moment. Um, and you have to do that. Yeah. Get rid of that. Okay. Going to share again. Sorry about that, folks. Um, so the best place to find a resource to learn what these schools, how generous these schools are, is on our website. My partner Jenny and I created these databases. Now there are interactive charts, which you'll see in a moment. We've been doing it for 8 or 9 years. We do it. It takes a great deal of work on our parts. We do it because we don't know how to advise families properly without having this kind of data at our fingertips. It's free. Anyone can go there. Just go to our website, bigjeducationalconsulting.com. Click on the resources tab. You'll see 7 very cool charts. We're only going to look at one of them today. And the one we're going to look at today is domestic undergraduate need-based and merit aid. We publish these charts every August 1st. So in a few weeks, we're going to start to begin to gather the data, but it takes us through the end of July to actually build these spreadsheets and convert them into these interactive charts. A lot of work, but we love them. So this is the chart you need for determining which colleges will be for domestic students. We have another chart for international students, which are generous with need-based aid, which are generous with merit aid, and which are generous with both. Click on the button Interactive Chart. And what opens up is an alphabetical listing of about 470, 480 institutions. So if you're like Carolina and you need to find the 60 schools that are meeting 100% of need because you have moderate to substantial demonstrated need, and we'll talk in a few minutes about how to determine that. But if you know that you're a low-income family and you need every dollar you can possibly get from the institution to pay for college, this is what you do. This column, average percent of need met for all undergraduates at that school, all you do is magic. click on that column header, and it resorts the entire list of 470 something schools to list the schools that meet 100% of need at the top. And that's how I know there were 60. I counted them. Um, and we see right here, Barnard College meets 100% of need, zero merit aid. These two columns next to the average percent of need are the merit aid columns. So let me reset the chart back to alphabetical. And now we want to find schools that are generous with merit aid. So we click on the average merit aid award to non-need undergraduates right here. And that will resort the entire list of schools according to who has the highest average merit aid award. And like I said, we see Duke at the top, but only 4% of Duke undergraduates get merit. So if you're applying to Duke, you know, you're probably not getting in, number one, because their admit rate is so minuscule. But if you get in, you then are probably not going to be getting merit aid either. So we're looking at two columns here. We're looking at the average award, this column, and we're looking at the percent of undergraduates at that school who are getting merit. So if it's only 4, 8, very unlikely you will get merit aid. But if it's 97, 93, 98, 139 is not our error. This is just the data they reported. Actually, more students, we run into this a fair amount. Data can sometimes be fuzzy, and it's not an inaccurate thing. It might be one year's data versus another year's data combining into the same um, uh, database. So just consider anything above 100 to be about 100%. So we see here, I wonder if Tulane is on this page. Maybe it's on the next page. No, I don't see, well, I'm not going to go through the whole chart looking for Tulane, but we see lots of schools here that have a very fat average merit aid award, and also are giving it to a large percentage of their non-need undergraduates. The undergraduates with need are primarily, as I said, getting need-based aid. All right, so that's a quick lesson on our charts. You're welcome on our chart. You're welcome to go to our website and find it, this process. See you again next time.